Hello? Yay, awesome. Okay. So, g'day, mate. My name is Anna Cochran, and I'm going to be talking about the music of Australia and the Torres Strait Islands. So, what is Australian music? You're probably thinking, like, Australia is just that country at the bottom right corner of our maps where Finding Nemo takes place and there's kangaroos and koalas. But there's so much more than that. There's music. And the thing about the music in Australia is that it's so hard to define. And that's simply because there's so many different types of music in this country. If you simply look up on Google Australian music, you'll find plenty of didgeridoo videos, but you'll also find contemporary music videos, lots of folk and country music, and so much more. When you look up Aboriginal music, also known as Indigenous, you'll see that the music is put with other forms of art, including dance and other forms of art. And don't worry, we'll go more into detail. Australian music is used in so many different instances, such as ceremonies, corroborees, which are a sort of ritual or a gathering, and weddings. And the types of music change depending on what is going on, but it is so interesting to watch and to listen to all of the music that is played throughout Australia. So, the types of instruments in Australia. Number one, the one that everybody goes to first, the didgeridoo. It's also known as the didge, to shorten the very lengthy name that is extremely hard to spell. So this instrument was made over 1,500 years ago, and interestingly enough, there's not a single Aboriginal group that originally called this instrument the didgeridoo. So the name came from an Australian ethnomusicologist who realized that the basic sounds and rhythms of the instrument being played, when you heard it, it goes didgeridoo, didgeridoo, and they're like, oh, well, cool, we'll call it a didgeridoo. So again, it's referred to as a didge, and it's used for a corroboree, which is again a type of ceremony, and again similar to a powwow. Aboriginal people use this instrument along with many others that I will mention soon in the corroborees with costumes, dance, and to be further in contact with the dream time. And I'm excited to mention that later. So this picture is from my seminar in global music class when we were playing the didgeridoo on PVC pipes, the easiest and best way to learn. So the next instrument is the gum leaf, and this is a fascinating instrument to me. So this is simply a leaf. That's all it is. It's a eucalyptus leaf, it's a tree leaf, where people will often see koala bears just sitting and kookaburras eating, or just, they're there, Australian animals just sitting. And people took this leaf from a tree, and because it imitates bird calls, they were like, oh, we can make a melodic noise out of this, and it just became a popular instrument. So you take the leaf and press it between, it's using the hands and the lips, and you just blow across the leaf, and it makes a really cool sound. So we're gonna go ahead and watch the video. So yeah, that is the gum leaf. Again, fascinating to watch and to listen to. So the next type of instrument is called the bull roarer, also known as the turndun or the rhombus. And this dates back all the way to the Paleolithic period, where humans lived in caves or huts, and when humans were hunters and gatherers. So the bull roarer is used for Aboriginal Australian communication, and it also scares off evil influences. So, as shown in the bottom left picture, it's simply a piece of wood with a cord attached to it, and when swung around, it makes a roaring sound, hence the name bull roarer, and it's very loud, and that's why it's good for communication. So, it's played at corroborees with instruments like the didgeridoo. So the next instrument is the clapsticks, also known as the clappers, bilmas, or music sticks. And they're two pieces of wood that are struck together to make a sharp clicking sound. They come in pairs, as the plural name suggests, and one is smaller than the other, as the image shows, and the smaller one is hit against the larger one, and these help maintain the rhythm of a corroboree and are often played with other instruments. So the instrument on the bottom right is a wobble board, and the picture is actually the inventor, Rolf Harris. So wobble board, it's like a weird name, but it's really fun. So Rolf Harris is an Australian composer and musician, and he decided to take a thin piece of composite and just took it back and forth and wobbled it, and it made like a whooping sound, and he's like, yeah, let's make this an instrument. So it's really fun and interesting to watch people play, and yeah, the wobble board, everybody. Aboriginal Australian. So another part of my seminar in global music class, I was able to see a didgeridoo performed live in person. So you're going to see Rob Thomas, and he is playing a didgeridoo that he made. He's using the clappers in his right hand and using his left hand to hold the didgeridoo up. On his ankle, he's using what are called rattles, and they're used to help keep the rhythm and melody going and with the beat that he's playing. So during this, Rob Thomas helps, he begins with replicating the sounds of the kookaburra, which is the Australian national bird, and playing other Aboriginal Australian sounds. So yes, Rob Thomas, he was able to explain to our class that he used to make and still plays didgeridoos, as well as how and why different didgeridoos have pitches based on the length. So the deeper and the longer the didgeridoo, the deeper the pitch. So now we get into the Aboriginal culture in Australia. So Aboriginal means that a person, place, custom, thing, all that is native to a land. So when I talk about the Aboriginal or Indigenous people in Australia, I am referring to the people that were first in Australia and have always lived in Australia. The Aboriginal culture and people have always lived and breathed the life of Australia, and I'm very excited to dive into the music of this place. So a lot of the music that I've previously shown is from Aboriginal cultures in Australia. So in the corner is actually the Aboriginal Australian flag, and you'll notice that it's very different from the one that we would normally see today. So as of 2021, the Indigenous population of Australians was around 882,000 people, and projected to be about 1.1 million people by 2031, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So, getting into it. Aboriginal people believe strongly in the music and dance of Australia, understanding that it is important to keep the tradition of their country alive. It is known that in Aboriginal Australian music, the rhythm will remain constant without increasing or decreasing. However, the musicians will take liberties to either take it exactly twice the speed of the original tempo, which is double time, or exactly half the speed, which is half time. So the clapsticks and the didge help maintain the tempo and the rhythms. And when we're talking about melody, it's either present in a vocalist or the gum leaf, which we showed has a very melodic line. There isn't a lot of melodic diversity and the range, and what's interesting is that not every Aboriginal group strictly follows all of these rules. It just depends on the clan. And the dynamics are also something that tends to stay consistent during the piece. Either it's all loud, which is forte, or it's all soft, which is piano. And as the piece tends to shift from faster or slower rhythms, the piece changes dynamics with that. So then we get into the dream time, which is also known as the dreaming or simply dreaming. This is a way that Aboriginal people keep in touch with their ancestors. So the dream time uses folk tales, religion, history, and many other things. They also use song lines, which are like topography maps, and so say if a kid were to memorize them as a young child and end up in like an unfamiliar land and they like remember this song line from when they were young, and like, oh my goodness, I know exactly where I am because I know this song line. So that's really interesting about dream time and song lines. So when dancing in Aboriginal Australia, there is always some sort of music, such as a didge, a singer, or a bilma playing behind it, and it's often performed in choreographed groups. As the dream time discusses different parts of Australian culture, the dance goes through many parts of natural life. The dance is large, bulky, and a lively action that encapsulates the audience and the musicians. So next is the Torres Strait Islands. So the Torres Strait Islands are a part of Australia northeast to the main island. The Aboriginal people of Australia and the Torres Strait Islanders are very commonly grouped together when talking about musical instruments. So these people construct many musical instruments, including idiophones, membraphones, and aerophones. So the first instrument I'm going to mention is called a kulap. And this instrument is a rattle that is made from a matchbox bean vine, and the seeds are cut in half to be strung together. And this is an example of an idiophone, which is an instrument that produces sound just by vibrating itself. So the next instrument is called a warrap, and this is an hourglass drum that is native to both the Torres Islander people and the Papua New Guinea people. So one end of the warrap is open to let sound out, and then the other end is circular and covered with animal skin. And so the membrane, which is the drum head, is fastened in place with beeswax and twine. And then the Torres Strait Islanders also use leaf playing in this region, and that is an example of an aerophone. So, and then we get into other types of Australian music, because in the whole country of Australia, we can't just have Aboriginal music. So there are contemporary music, there is modern music all over the world, and those ideas are constantly changing. There's country, punk, R&B, hip-hop, rock bands, and so many other things to add to Australian variety. Australia has a lot of live music showing off national and international acts, also through music festivals. In jazz music in Australia, it's also often improvised in as many jazz clubs, venues, and jazz festivals. And then orchestras in Australia have many large audiences, and it's hard not to be interested in these when there's over 10 professional orchestras in Australia, and they all have large concerts and work with other orchestras, do workshops and recordings. The symphonies have many players on stage and even do include more players for more repertoire, and some symphonies do other education programs as well. So are there any questions that anybody has? Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys listening.